They don't shout it. They don't fight you with fists. They break you slowly, with smiles, with guilt, with silence, with affection that disappears the moment you speak your truth. They don't want your strength. They want control dressed up as love. They don't want to build with you. They want to reshape you. Strong men aren't destroyed in one blow. They're broken piece by piece by the things they let slide. And every time you ignore that tight feeling in your chest, every time you excuse that off comment, every time you pretend that disrespect didn't happen, you lose a part of who you are. You were born with strength, but no one taught you how to protect it. This is how they take it from you. That's why I'm building the most important guide I've ever created, the Stoic Relationship Blueprint for men who are ready to protect their soul, their sanity, and their mission. Stay tuned, it's dropping very soon. And if you don't understand these 8 behaviors, she won't just take your time, she'll drain your spirit. Comment untouchable boundaries if you're done tolerating disrespect disguised as love. Number 1. Rewriting the past. It starts small. A simple disagreement. You remember something happening one way. She remembers it differently, but not just differently. She remembers it in a way that flips the roles. You become the insensitive one. She becomes the misunderstood victim. At first you let it go, thinking maybe she just sees it differently. But then it happens again and again. Suddenly, entire chapters of your relationship start to feel like they were ripped out and rewritten. You begin questioning yourself, not just what happened, but who you are. She tells you that the time you walked away during a fight meant you didn't care. But you remember doing it to stop things from escalating. She says you always shut down. But you remember begging her to just listen without attacking. Then, one day, she tells you that the relationship started falling apart because you never made her feel safe. And you pause, because deep down, you know you tried, not once or twice, but every damn day. You sacrificed your comfort, your values, your voice. But now, none of that counts, because the story has changed, and you're the villain in her new version. That's not miscommunication. That's a war on your memory. And once a man loses trust in his memory, he loses trust in his mind. When you no longer trust what happened, you can be manipulated into anything. You start thinking, maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I did mess up more than I realized. Maybe I really was the reason things went wrong. And in that moment of self-doubt, you hand over your power. She doesn't need to yell or lie or argue. She just needs you to doubt yourself, because a man who doubts himself is easier to control. This tactic works so well because it attacks the very foundation of masculinity, the ability to see clearly, judge fairly, and act decisively. You can't lead yourself if you don't trust your perception. You can't lead a relationship if your reality is constantly questioned. Imagine living in a house where the furniture keeps moving slightly every night. At first, you think you're tired. Then, you think you're clumsy. Eventually, you start believing you're losing your mind. That's what rewriting the past does. It's the slow dislocation of your internal compass. And the more you accept her version, the more yours disappears. She tells you, "I never said that," even though you remember it word for word. She swears, "You're imagining things," when your gut screams otherwise. And every time you give her the benefit of the doubt, you betray yourself. Not because you're weak, but because no one taught you that doubt is the first step to control. A man doesn't become weak because he feels. He becomes weak when he forgets what he saw, what he heard, what he knew to be true. You must protect your perception like a fortress, because everything, your confidence, your peace, your direction, depends on it. So what do? You write, you reflect, you track. Not like a paranoid victim, but like a warrior keeping his vision sharp. When conflict arises, don't just react, Remember, document what was said. Notice the patterns. Call it out calmly, without rage. Say, "That's not what happened, and I won't accept my reality being rewritten." If she mocks you, walks away, dismisses it as drama, she's not interested in truth. She's interested in power. A woman who honors the relationship honors truth, not her version of it, the actual truth. If she can't face it, she's not safe for your mind. And your mind is your most sacred territory. It governs your peace. It drives your mission. It protects your soul. Guard it fiercely. Do not let affection blind you to deception. Do not let loneliness make you betray your own memory. Do not let gaslighting pass as passion. Truth is a man's compass, and when someone starts twisting it, even with love on their lips, you walk away. Because a woman who won't honor what happened will never respect who you are. Number 2, using victimhood as armor. There's a kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't explode. It whimpers, sighs, and wears emotional wounds like a crown. She doesn't break you with rage. She breaks you with tears, with stories that come out at just the right moment, with phrases like, "I've just been through so much," and "You don't know how hard it is to trust after everything I've survived." And just like that, you're disarmed. You want to protect her. You want to help her heal. Because you're not heartless. You're just a man who's been conditioned to believe that patience is love, that tolerance is virtue, and that a woman's pain should always come before your peace. At first, it feels noble. You listen, you accommodate, you try to be understanding, but slowly, you start to notice a pattern. Every boundary you try to set triggers her pain. Every time you say no, it reminds her of someone who once hurt her. Every time you stand your ground, she becomes the victim again. And the worst part, the guilt eats you alive. You start to question yourself. Am I being too harsh? Maybe I just need to give her more time. She's been through a lot. I can't be another source of pain. But this isn't about healing. It's about hijacking. She's not sharing her pain. She's using it. And that pain has become a shield she hides behind, a weapon she uses to keep you compliant. Because what better way to control a man than to make him feel like protecting himself is hurting someone else? She doesn't need to scream to make you submit. She just needs to look wounded. Suddenly, your strength becomes a threat. Your confidence becomes arrogance. Your honesty becomes cruelty. The more you assert your truth, the more she positions herself as the innocent target of your emotional neglect. It's not just manipulation, it's emotional blackmail. You end up trapped in a relationship where your needs are always too much, your reactions always too strong, and your voice always too loud, because any assertion of self becomes an act of violence against her suffering. This is how men lose themselves in the name of compassion. They confuse silence for peace. They confuse avoidance for love. And they begin to serve not a woman, but her wounds. You become her therapist, her emotional sponge, her unending source of support, while getting nothing in return but blame and confusion. She doesn't take accountability because her pain gives her a free pass. She doesn't need to change because her past has become a permanent excuse. And if you ever push back, if you ever call it out, you become the monster in her narrative. Suddenly, she's telling friends that you're emotionally abusive, that you made her feel unsafe, that you didn't understand what she's been through, and the tragedy. She believes it. Because victimhood isn't just a tactic, it becomes her identity. And identity is the hardest mask to take off. So what do? You stop apologizing for protecting your peace. You stop setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You recognize that compassion without boundaries is not love. It's suicide. You begin to separate her pain from her behavior. Her trauma may explain her actions, but it doesn't excuse them. And when she uses her story to rewrite the rules, You write your own. You say, "I hear you, but I won't abandon myself to hold your pain." You say, "I respect your journey, but I won't be punished for things I didn't do." You say, "I'm here to grow with someone, not bleed for them." And then you watch. If she respects you, she'll meet you there. She'll take accountability. She'll grow. If she doesn't, she'll double down on the story where you're the villain and she's the eternal victim. That's when you walk, not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Because a man who honors himself refuses to be cast in someone else's tragedy. You are not her fixer. You are not her redeemer. You are not the emotional landfill for years of unprocessed wounds. You are a builder, a protector, a creator, and you deserve a partner, not a project. A man who forgets that becomes a servant to a story that was never his, but a man who remembers becomes free. Number 3, emotional pressure in public. There is a kind of erosion that doesn't start in arguments behind closed doors, but in casual gatherings, subtle comments, and offhand remarks that sound like jokes, but cut deeper than knives, and most men don't even notice it until it's too late. You're out with her friends, or yours, maybe it's her family or even yours, and she drops a line like, "He's been so moody lately, maybe I should buy him a manual on how to smile again." Laughter, light chuckles, a few raised eyebrows. And you, sitting there, caught off guard, have two choices: laugh it off and swallow it, or push back and look like the man who can't take a joke. Most men swallow it, because we've been trained to believe that to be strong is to be unfazed, to absorb and never react. But that reaction, or the lack of one, becomes the beginning of your decline. What starts as a single joke becomes a pattern. She criticizes your habits in front of others. She shares private details about your relationship with people who have no business knowing them. She builds a public persona of you that you barely recognize, and every time you allow it, you reinforce her position as the one with the emotional leverage. You might tell yourself it's not a big deal, that she's just blowing off steam, but ask yourself, why does she only mock you when others are around? Why is your character the one on trial when she needs to shine? Because the moment she makes a spectacle of your vulnerability, it stops being about communication and becomes about control. You start to shrink. You speak less when others are around. You hesitate before sharing opinions. You walk into social situations tense, not because of the people, but because you're waiting for the next jab to land in the name of humor. This is what emotional pressure in public looks like. Not overt domination, but death by 1,000 paper cuts in front of witnesses. You become the man always overreacting, the sensitive one, the difficult partner. And every time you let it go, you teach her that your dignity is negotiable. This isn't about being fragile. This is about setting a standard for respect that does not disappear the moment an audience shows up. A man who values himself does not allow his private loyalty to be traded for her public approval. She might think it's harmless, but your body remembers every time your spirit was dismissed for entertainment. And if you don't draw the line, that wound becomes part of your identity. The way you stop this isn't by exploding, it's by asserting. You don't yell, you don't plead, you lock eyes, you wait. You make it clear with your presence alone that you're not a man to be used for applause. If she tries to laugh it off again, you say, "I don't appreciate being talked about like that, especially not in front of others." And when the conversation shifts, and it always will, you remember this. Love that requires public humiliation to function is not love. It's theater, and you're not here to be anyone's clown. You're here to be respected, seen, valued. If she needs an audience to feel big, let her perform alone. A woman worthy of your leadership doesn't seek to win points by making you small. She builds you in public, protects you in private, and never uses your presence as a stepping stone to her social standing. That kind of woman doesn't drain you in crowds, she doubles your strength. But you'll never find her if you're too afraid to call out disrespect where it begins, with the first joke that didn't feel like one. Number 4. Fix him. Mindset. She didn't fall in love with who you are. She fell in love with the man she could turn you into. And at first, it feels flattering. She calls you full of potential. She praises your ambition. She smiles when you speak about your goals. But underneath that admiration is a blueprint, not one you designed, but one she built the moment she saw you. She doesn't love you as you are. She loves the version of you she thinks you could be. If only you'd change this, adjust that, soften here, try harder there. It begins slowly, a suggestion, a gentle correction, a look of disapproval when you say something she doesn't like, and soon enough, you start to reshape. You stop wearing what you like because she says it's immature. You adjust your tone because she says it's aggressive. You change your goals because she says they're unrealistic. You abandon your hobbies because she says they waste time. And in the mirror, you no longer see a man, you see a project. Piece by piece, she dismantles the man you were, all in the name of love. But love that demands your transformation as a condition for approval is not love, it's conquest. She doesn't want a partner, she wants a project she can take credit for. And every time you conform to her mold, you shrink a little more. You lose your edge, you lose your direction. You begin living in reaction to her preferences, not in alignment with your own purpose. The world stops feeling like something you're meant to shape and starts feeling like something you're trying not to upset. And here's the worst part. You think you're growing because we're told that adapting is mature, that compromise is the key to a good relationship. But this isn't compromise. This is coercion hidden behind compliments. You're not growing together. You're growing into someone else, someone she can manage, not someone she can admire. A man must grow, yes, he must evolve, but that growth must be internal, deliberate, driven by his own code, not forced by external disapproval. You can't lead if you're always waiting for her validation. You can't protect if you've handed over your core to be edited. You can't build if you're walking on ground that shifts every time she disapproves. So what's the solution? You reclaim your authority. You return to your original blueprint. You ask yourself, who am I without her suggestions? What do I value when no one is watching? What am I building, and who am I becoming on my own terms? And then you begin again. Not by becoming rigid, not by shutting down, but by remembering that leadership means setting the direction, not following emotional signals. You say, I'm not looking to be corrected. I'm looking to be challenged by someone who respects where I'm going. You say, if you see potential, support the journey, don't script it. You say, I'm willing to grow with someone, but I will never abandon myself to be more palatable to your preferences. And then you act. You make your decisions without waiting for approval. You take up space without apologizing. You lead, not with noise, but with conviction. And if she stays, it's because she sees your strength and respects it. If she leaves, it's because she wasn't interested in love, only control. The truth is, the woman who needs to fix you will never feel safe unless you're beneath her. But the woman who truly loves you won't need to fix anything. She'll inspire growth by walking beside you, not standing over you with a checklist. Stop trying to meet her expectations and start living by your own. Because no man finds his strength by being redesigned. He finds it by remembering he was never broken to begin with. Number 5. Creating insecurity loops. It starts with affection so sweet, you wonder how you ever lived without it. The late-night texts, the long looks, the subtle touch that makes you feel like the center of her world. And that's the point. Because in the beginning, she gives you everything. She mirrors your energy, your words, your tone. She studies your rhythm, picks up your slang, syncs her desires to your drive, and it all feels real, so real that you believe this could be the one. She makes you feel seen in a way you've never been seen before, understood in a way your exes never even tried. You open up, you lower your guard, you stop scanning for red flags because she feels different. But then, just when you've fully stepped in, she pulls back. And it's not dramatic at first, it's small. She takes longer to reply. She says she's just tired. She suddenly becomes busy when you want to talk. She skips a compliment. She withholds the praise she used to give so freely. She creates a space between you and says nothing about it. You sense something's off, but when you ask, she tells you, "Everything's fine," and smiles. Now you're left with a question mark where certainty used to live, and without even realizing it, your mind starts trying to close the loop. Did you say something wrong? Did you not compliment her enough? Were you too needy, too distant? And that's exactly what she wants, for you to live in a constant loop of emotional math, running calculations that never solve because the variable keeps changing. She teaches you to chase the version of her she showed you at the beginning, and because you tasted that attention once, you think you can earn it again. But love should never be a performance with shifting rules. It should not feel like chasing a moving target. If you're constantly adjusting your behavior to make her act like the woman she used to be, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a psychological loop designed to train you. Every reward becomes conditional. She's warm when you please her. She's cold when you assert yourself. She's affectionate when you agree. She's distant when you push back. The message is clear. Compliance is rewarded. Authenticity is punished. You begin to shrink, slowly, until you're no longer living for yourself. You're living for her approval. The tragic part is, most men don't even realize it's happening. They just think they're being considerate. They think this is what compromise looks like. They think emotional unavailability is just her processing things. But emotional unavailability is not a phase. It's a weapon when used deliberately. She knows that if she gave you consistent love, you'd relax, you'd stop chasing, you'd see clearly. So she keeps it just out of reach, not because she can't love, but because she knows you're more controllable when you're unsure. It's the same technique used in casinos: irregular wins, constant hope. And men get addicted to it because we're wired to solve problems, to fix things, to figure it out. You believe that if you just tweak the formula, say the right thing, show up in the right way, she'll go back to who she was. But she won't, because that woman never truly existed. She was a mask used to capture you. Now that she has you, the real game begins. So how do you break the loop? You stop dancing to music only she can hear. You stop reacting to her moods like a puppet. You stop assigning meaning to every emotional breadcrumb. You step back and observe, not with bitterness, but with clarity. You ask yourself, does this feel stable? Does this feel mutual? Am I being celebrated or just tolerated? And when the answer keeps coming back as confusion, you do the thing she fears most. You detach. Not emotionally shut down, not cold, not cruel, but with strength. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop begging her to return to the woman she pretended to be. And you hold the line. A man who knows his worth doesn't negotiate for affection. He doesn't beg to be treated with consistency. He expects it, and if it's not there, he moves accordingly. Because every time you compromise your sanity to maintain a bond with someone who keeps you emotionally dizzy, you lose more than just your peace. You lose your sense of self. And no relationship is worth that price. Number 6. Expecting leadership but hating authority. She says she wants a man who leads, and you believe her. Because what man doesn't want to lead with strength, clarity, purpose? You hear her say things like, "I love a guy who takes charge," or "I just want someone decisive," and it lights something up in you. You step into the role with pride. You plan the dates. You structure your day around what matters most. You make decisions that aren't just reactive, but guided by vision. And at first, she praises you for it. She tells her friends how refreshing it is to be with a man who knows where he's going. But then something shifts. It starts when your decisions begin to challenge her preferences. You suggest a boundary she doesn't like. You make a financial choice that doesn't involve her. You say no when she expects a yes. And now that same leadership she admired starts getting called controlling. She says you're too rigid, too stuck in your ways, too serious. She accuses you of not listening, of thinking everything has to be your way. Suddenly, the very authority she said she respected becomes the threat she resents. And you're left confused. Because you didn't change, you just stopped asking permission. And that's the real issue. She never wanted leadership. She wanted direction that served her comfort, not your purpose. She wanted a man who takes charge, as long as he takes charge in the way she wants. She wanted a man who leads, as long as she doesn't have to follow. But leadership isn't a democracy. It's responsibility. It's burden. It's making the call even when it's unpopular. And when a woman isn't ready to trust your direction, she'll start a subtle rebellion. She'll question your choices in front of others. She'll mock your goals as unrealistic. She'll act like your standards are oppressive. And most dangerously, she'll start offering emotional rewards only when you bend. You'll find yourself softening your tone, tweaking your words, editing your mission just enough to keep the peace. But peace bought at the price of leadership is a peace built on your submission. And over time, that kind of peace feels like prison. You stop recognizing yourself. You delay decisions, second-guess your instincts, wait for approval before every step. And eventually, you become the man who used to lead, now stuck asking for permission to breathe. This is the trap of modern relationships that speak about equality but secretly crave control. It's not about being above her. It's about not living beneath yourself. Real leadership isn't domination. It's direction. It's clarity. It's saying, "This is where I'm going. You're welcome to come with me, but I'm not changing course to keep you comfortable." And here's what separates the men who reclaim their power from the ones who lose it in compromise. Boundaries. You don't argue your vision. You don't justify your mission. You don't lecture. You lead. And you observe who falls in line not out of fear, but out of alignment. Because the woman who truly respects you will want to be part of your plan, not rewrite it. She'll offer her thoughts, not demands. She'll challenge you, but won't try to replace your authority with hers. And if she doesn't, you let her go. Not because you're heartless, but because your heart is committed to your path. Leadership isn't about being followed blindly. It's about walking so clearly, so unapologetically, that the right people naturally keep pace. If your leadership triggers resistance, rebellion, and resentment, you're not with someone who wants to be led. You're with someone who wants to be in control. And two competing authorities cannot build peace. So what do? You set the standard from day one. You say, "This is what I'm building. This is how I lead. And I'll always listen. But I won't be led by guilt, games, or resistance." And then you live it. You don't ask for buy-in. You don't water it down. You lead like your life depends on it, because it does. Your purpose, your mission, your sanity, all depend on your refusal to shrink, to fit her fears. And when you walk like that, one of two things will happen. She'll rise with you, or she'll fall away. Either way, you'll be free. Because leadership isn't about having someone behind you. It's about never losing yourself in front of someone else. Number 7. Withholding accountability. She hurts you, but you end up apologizing. You express a concern, and suddenly you're accused of being dramatic. You point out something that crossed your boundary, and now you're the one ruining the vibe. It's a subtle game, not one of truth, but of emotional misdirection. And it works because it plays on your best qualities as a man, your desire to be fair, to avoid unnecessary conflict, to de-escalate instead of dominate. But when those instincts are used against you, you begin to carry blame for things you didn't do. You become the emotional janitor for a mess you didn't make. Every time you confront an issue, she redirects it with surgical precision. You always find a way to make me feel like the bad guy, or I didn't mean it like that. Why do you always take things the wrong way? What she's really saying is, don't hold me accountable, because if you do, I'll punish you emotionally until you stop trying. Over time, you learn to stay quiet. Not because you agree, not because everything is fine, but because it feels safer. You stop naming your truth. You stop asking for clarity. You stop hoping for repair. And that is when the real damage happens, not to the relationship, but to your sense of reality. Because when someone repeatedly avoids ownership of their actions, the burden doesn't disappear. It just shifts onto you. You become the one constantly analyzing your tone, double-checking your words, trying to not make things worse. You become hyper-aware of every response, every facial expression, every sigh. And this hypervigilance makes you feel crazy. It makes you doubt your memory. It makes you question if maybe, just maybe, you are the one making it all up. But you're not. You're just in a space where accountability is treated as an attack, and your desire for honesty is treated as aggression. She doesn't have to scream to manipulate you. She just has to stay emotionally unavailable when she's wrong. And that withdrawal becomes the leash. You find yourself chasing, trying to restore peace, not because you were wrong, but because you can't stand the disconnection. And that cycle repeats. She acts, you react, she denies, you apologize, and every loop reinforces the lie that your voice is the problem. But it's not. The real problem is that you're in a dynamic where responsibility is one-sided, where apologies only flow in one direction, where healing is always your job and mistakes are always your fault. So what do? You draw a line, not by yelling, not by demanding, but by standing still in your truth. You stop explaining your emotions as if they need approval. You say, "This is how I felt, this is what happened, this is what I need moving forward." And if she deflects, you don't chase. If she guilt trips, you don't buy in. You make it clear, your peace is not up for negotiation, and your reality is not open to revision. You hold space for mutual growth, not emotional martyrdom. You recognize that accountability is not about blame, it's about building something real. And if she can't meet you there, if she continues to escape responsibility like it's fire, then understand this. No amount of patience can fix a relationship built on avoidance. You can't grow with someone who uses your empathy as a shield against their own evolution. You can't thrive when truth is punished and lies are ignored. A man rooted in truth does not beg for accountability. He becomes the standard. And when your standard is clear, you stop attracting partners who fear truth and start drawing in those who are strong enough to grow in it. Number 8. Sabotaging your independence. Every time you prioritize your mission, she feels like she's losing. Every hour you invest in your business, your craft, your purpose, becomes a threat to her sense of control. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your independence means you don't orbit around her emotions. And for someone who needs to feel like the sun in your universe, that is unacceptable. So she begins, not with commands, but with questions that carry guilt. Do you really have to work tonight? Is this more important than us? You've changed. You used to have time for me. And if those don't work, she escalates to emotional withdrawal. You'll notice she becomes distant when you're at your busiest, cold when you're most focused, passive-aggressive right before a big opportunity. And you wonder, why now? Why this timing? It's not random, it's sabotage, cloaked in emotion. She creates conflict during moments that require your full attention because she wants to pull your focus away from yourself and back onto her. And every time you abandon your mission to fix the relationship, to reassure her, to calm her storms, you teach her that all it takes to disrupt your path is a well-timed emotional trigger. That's not love, that's manipulation. Because love doesn't need you to be less, it inspires you to be more. Real love doesn't fear your independence, it celebrates it. But when you're with someone who fears your growth, they'll start to compete with your greatness. They'll belittle your goals subtly. You're always so busy with your little projects. They'll compare your ambition to neglect. You used to make more time for us when things weren't so serious. They'll downplay your achievements. It's cool, I guess, but it's not like you're saving the world. And slowly, if you're not careful, you begin to shrink again. You cut down your hours. You put off that next step. You start canceling the things that gave you life just to keep the peace. And you lose the edge that made you magnetic in the first place. Because nothing drains a man's spirit like trading his mission for emotional stability that never lasts. So, what do? You build a life where your purpose is your anchor, not your apology. You make it clear, with action, not just words, that your time, your energy, your goals are sacred. You schedule your priorities and treat them as non-negotiables. You say no without guilt. You say, this matters to me. And if being with me means competing with my growth, then this won't work. You choose people who understand that supporting you sometimes means stepping back, not stepping in. You lead by example and let your discipline be the boundary that protects your vision. And if she can't handle your independence, if she tries to frame it as selfishness, if she needs you to dim your light to feel secure, then she was never there for the man, only for the version of you she could manage. And that's not love. That's codependency dressed in concern. A real partner doesn't make you choose between love and legacy. They walk beside you while you build both. Protect your space, protect your time, protect your fire. Because the world already throws enough distractions your way. You don't need your partner to become one of them. You need someone who reminds you of your strength, not someone who resents it. You've seen the patterns. You've felt the weight. You know what it's like to question your voice, to doubt your instincts, to sacrifice your mission piece by piece in the name of keeping a relationship that's quietly breaking you. You've smiled through disrespect, kept quiet through emotional sabotage, and convinced yourself that patience would one day be rewarded with peace. But peace never came, only exhaustion. Because in a world that shames men for setting boundaries, that mocks masculinity until it's broken, and that tells you to shrink to be loved, it's no wonder so many are lost, angry, disconnected from the very core of who they are. You weren't taught how to navigate this. No one handed you a manual. You were told to endure, to be strong. But strength without direction is just silent suffering. And that ends now. Because the Stoic relationship blueprint is dropping very soon, the clearest, boldest, most unfiltered guide ever created for men who are done tolerating pain dressed as partnership. This isn't just another ebook. This is the path back to yourself, to clarity, to peace, to relationships where you are respected, not reshaped, heard, not managed, admired, not controlled. It breaks down every tactic, every emotional pattern, every unseen dynamic that's been stealing your power, and shows you exactly how to reclaim it, one boundary, one decision, one truth at a time. It's not just about relationships. It's about becoming a man who lives by a code that no woman, no opinion, no situation can shake. If you're serious about transforming your life and want to get this ebook as soon as it drops, comment Blueprint below. Let the world know you're done with confusion, done with shrinking, and support this channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Because with your support, we'll make sure that this message, this clarity, this truth reaches every man who needs to hear this.